of you ghosty ghouls who wanna hear a spooky tune about a legend that's true. All of you creepy goblins, I'm gonna sing about a legend, a preacher whose heart was rotten. And he lived in Kentucky, in the backwoods of Kentucky, in the hills of Kentucky, in the wilds of Kentucky. He was a preacher man, he was an evil man, preaching for the devil's clan and Soul's Chapel. Preacher man, a wicked preacher man, preaching for the devil's clan and Soul's Chapel. Of you ghosty ghouls who wanna hear a spooky tune about a legend that's true. About all of you creepy goblins, I'm gonna sing about a legend, a preacher whose heart was rotten. And he lived in Kentucky, in the backwoods of Kentucky, in the hills of Kentucky, in the wilds of Kentucky. He was a preacher man, he was an evil man, preaching for the devil's clan and Soul's Chapel. He was a preacher man, a wicked preacher man, preaching for the devil's clan and Soul's Chapel. He was a preacher man, he was an evil man, preaching for the devil's clan and Soul's Chapel. A preacher man, a wicked preacher man, preaching for the devil's clan and Soul's Chapel. He was a preacher man, he was a preacher man. He was a preacher man.
He was a preacher man. Hey everybody, welcome to Live Storytime with author Steven Dowell. And my little dog Sammy's, he always says it right at the beginning when I start talking. He knows there's something up if I'm talking. I hope y'all are doing well. Thank you so much for joining me. I am super excited to be reading to you today from my very first book, The Legend of Soul's Chapel. I got books on the brain. First of all, I want to share something with you all. We sold a book, The Legend of Soul's Chapel, this week, and I heard this morning from the lady who bought it, and I want to share that with you. Her name is Christy Cotton Gym, a good friend of mine, and she said, now she just got this book the other day. I finished Soul's Chapel. That is so, she's got 3 O's, captivating. I couldn't put it down. You are blessed, definitely. I can't wait to read more books. Super Nangi is on the way to me. Yes, with about 4 S's. Bless you, my Somerset friend. I guess Chris doesn't know I moved Bowling Green. But anyways, I was very encouraged by that, and I wanted to share it. And before we begin, of course, I have the whole cover here. I just updated the cover to what you're seeing there. But I want to share a little bit about the history of this book. When I wrote the book, I was just doing it to become an author. That's the truth. I had no idea how God was going to use this book. I changed my profile picture to one that was taken at a book signing. And the guy that's in the picture with me, he walked from downtown Somerset in the heat to Book and CD Hut in Tradewinds Plaza on Highway 27 in Somerset, Kentucky, to attend that book signing. At another book signing, a lady drove from Pikeville, Kentucky to Somerset to come to a book signing. I was amazed that people would be interested this much in this book. But the greatest blessing of all, this book had a very large following from people who was involved in the occult. These are people that ordinarily I would never have had a chance to speak with. And yet they would kind of flock to me because of this book. And it gave me numerous chances to witness to those who are practicing witchcraft and demonology and all these things that we know are not of God. And so I've always been grateful for the Lord giving me this platform. Now, give me just a second, let me get a drink. If you're not familiar with the legend of Souls Chapel, Souls Chapel was a church in eastern Pulaski County, Kentucky. And in the late 1880s, there was a sinister minister, is what I call him, by the name of James Powell. You can see his name's on the cover there. And James Powell was a wolf in sheep's clothing, a false prophet. He disguised himself as a man of God, but in reality, he was a Satanist. And as legend would have it, he converted his congregation to Satanism. Those who refused were slaughtered. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the legend of Souls Chapel. It ends with people finding out, because your sins always find you out. And they killed him in the church. So, that's the legend. That's all I know. When I wanted to become an author, I spoke to a publisher, and they said if I would write something scary, they would publish it because that's what sells. I just said that. Well, I'd always heard people say, write what you know. I don't know anything scary except for the legend of Souls Chapel. And as I began to research, about it and found out that the preacher's name was James Powell. I thought, well, my last name is Dowell, and that rhymes. So I made up a story of being his descendant and them having changed our names to Dowell to protect us. And so that part's fiction, but it makes for a good story. All right, let's get into it. Prologue. Souls Chapel is a very real place indeed. People from all over the world have heard of the horrible tale that is said to have occurred there. No one knows for sure exactly what happened in this place so many years ago. Many would deny that anything sinister took place at all. And yet, there are others who can tell you of the strange things they have felt and even seen with their own eyes. Yes, many strange, unusual, and extremely frightening things are reported to have occurred out there in this remote part of Pulaski County, Kentucky. Even to this day. However, this book in no way validates these claims. This book is fiction and is meant to be read as such. The characters in this book are not meant to be representations of anyone living or dead. Any similarities are not intended and are purely coincidental. Dedication. This book is lovingly dedicated to my daughter Natalie, who encouraged me to believe I could do it. I also want to say a special thank you to all the fans on Facebook. It was your enthusiasm and support that kept me going. Thank you all. Chapter 1. Nightmares. Oh God, this can't be happening. He can't have her. Not my baby. You can't have her. You hear me? I yelled as I ran through the woods, searching frantically for my only child. The thorns were ripping my flesh, and the rocks were stabbing my feet, but I didn't care. I had to find her before he took her back to hell with him. I finally reached the clearing and came upon a little cemetery. The full moon lit up the cemetery, and finally I was able to see my surroundings clearly. The cemetery made me feel cold and alone. It was not the usual feeling I have in cemeteries. In fact, I had never felt like this before in my life. I felt like an intruder I instinctively knew I was not welcome there, and my life would be in mortal danger if I didn't leave immediately. Still, I couldn't move. I couldn't leave until I found her. Somehow, I just knew she was there. I could feel it in my bones. It was almost as if I could smell her in the air. I was not about to leave until she was back in my arms or I died trying. She had to be among the tombs, scared and hopefully alone. I had to find my little girl. All at once, she appeared behind a tombstone. There she is. I see her, I cried. Natalie, I yelled to her, but she didn't answer. I couldn't believe my eyes. What I saw next turned my stomach to rot. Oh God, what is she doing? I cried. Baby, no! Oh God, oh God, I'm coming. Daddy's coming, baby. Hold on. Just please hold on. I screamed as I jumped from my bed and ran across the hall to Natalie's room as fast as I could. I stumbled through the dark, stumping my toe on the bed frame, but I didn't even flinch from the tremendous pain shooting up my leg. My baby needed me, and that was all that mattered at the moment. Natalie had woken with night terrors again, and I had just awakened from my own nightmare. I sat down on her bed and tried to console her, but she was shaking so hard she didn't even know I was there at first. Baby, it's okay. It's okay. Daddy's here. Daddy's got you, I said as I hugged her up close and tried to assure her it had just been a bad dream. Just after what seemed like an eternity, her breathing began to slow down and she stopped shaking. The screaming had turned into sobbing, and it was as if her body just melted in my arms. I took her face in my hands and asked her if she was feeling better now. Natalie softly nodded. In her angel voice, she gently reminded me that she didn't want to talk about it. Before I even had a chance to ask her, I know, baby, I know. I told her in almost a whisper, trying to hide my disappointment and fear about what was going on with her. I was terrified of what her dreams might be. I prayed they were nothing like my own dark terrors at night. My mind raced frantically, trying to figure out what torture my daughter was facing in her sleep. I couldn't help but ask myself, if I were to blame somehow, could I be the cause of my daughter's suffering? I asked myself over and over, not ever really trying to answer the horrible question. To think that I was the cause of her pain was something I couldn't even bear to consider. She's already experienced more than her fair share of pain in her young life. She had known nothing but sickness and death. She watched as sickness and disease ravaged the bodies of so many of her relatives. She witnessed their pain and suffering. On a daily basis for years. That's true. It was a wonder to me that she wasn't severely depressed or suicidal. I thanked God every day for her strength. Natalie has never been one to let her circumstances dictate her attitude. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. She takes that attribute from her mother, thank God. I am just the opposite. I let every little thing get to me. Life is extremely difficult when you allow people or circumstances to dictate your outlook on life. That is why I'm so thankful Nat is strong like her mother, or like her mother was. Her eyes began to flutter, and it seems she would be able to rest at least for a little while. I kissed her forehead and asked if she was ready to try and go back to sleep. She nodded yes, so I stood up and began tucking her in. As I wrapped her in her blankets, I said a quick prayer over her. I asked God to keep her safe through the night and for Him to put an edge of protection about her. I also asked Him to give me the strength and the wisdom to know what I needed to do to protect her. I kissed her forehead one last time and told her that I loved her. She smiled so sweetly and said in her little angelic voice, "I love you too, Daddy." I made my way to the door, trying to be as quiet as a mouse. As I reached the door, I looked back and asked her if she needed a nightlight. It was dark in the room, but in the moonlight, I could see her eyes were telling me yes, even though she was too embarrassed to say it out loud. I went over and got her nightlight and plugged it in. Excuse me. And told her if she didn't want it, she could just unplug it. I knew we would both rest more easily with it on. I made my way to the door once again, turning back one last time to look at my beautiful little angel. I blew her a kiss and told her I loved her. She told me she loved me too, as I was leaving. At that moment, I was reminded that she was the only person in my life who had ever said this to me and made me believe it. I was headed back to my room to lie down when suddenly I remembered our plans for tomorrow. I called out to Natalie for her to remember we had a big day planned for tomorrow and for her to try and get some rest. Unknown to me, my efforts were in vain. She was already sound asleep. Well, that is not even half of chapter 1. But our time is just about up. So I want to share just a few things with you all. First of all, join me tomorrow night at 7 p.m. I'm going to be reading from my new book, From Broken to Whole, Biblical Healing from Divorce. And that book officially launches on Monday, the 15th. Now, on that day, one day only, it will be free in digital format. So be sure to get your copy on that day. And it would help me tremendously if you would write an honest review. A lot of people base their book buying choices on reviews. So that would help. I've actually had people that's been contacting me, wanting me to buy reviews. And I think that's dishonest. But if you get a book for free, please take the time to give it an honest review. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. Hope this was blessing. You had some fun. And come back and be with me tomorrow night. Also, check out the website, author StevenDowell.com. Thank you all, and God bless.